Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, do you know that the media is lying to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And we're going to be talking about that with my brother Ted. Amazing. I love everything he's doing. He was a reporter, he's an author, he does it all, and now he's going to give us the straight facts on what the media is trying to get us to do, and we don't even know that they're doing it. So, Ted, my brother, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Richard, I'm doing great. That was an amazing intro right there. That really got the blood pumping and the head banging. So, I'm just really happy to be here. Thank you.
I love it, brother. And like I said, I got to thank Gorilla Mind Energy Drink for keeping me going and focused. And also guys, we got new swag that came out today. It says, I win on the front, and in the back says, I'm a winner. And nice. If you pick up any of the swag, 100% of the proceeds go to help end veteran homelessness and veteran suicide. So guys, if you like swag, write swag down below. So first question right off the bat, it's easy. For, especially being, some of the jobs that you've had and some of the ways that you grew up, your whole life hasn't been sunshine, rainbows, Skittles, and unicorns. So what is your definition of resiliency?
Well, I would have to say it's being able, well, you call yourself the comeback coach. So it's being able to come back from these hardships that we experience in life, being able to have that strength, and and it can come from within, or it can also come from other sources. You gather around yourself a team of people that support you. That can be that I've found is very helpful. But being able to carry on. Just despite challenges that we might face. And I work now, you talked about, I was a reporter for 25 years. Now I work as a public information officer and I work with a lot of first responders. So in that realm of emergency management, we talk about resiliency quite a bit as it pertains to a community and how a community can be resilient. And in preparing for natural disasters and man-made disasters. So the word resiliency is common in what I do to this day, but personally too. Yeah, I mean, if I look back, I mean, I thought I had a great childhood, but there were obstacles to overcome, just like anyone else. I'm no different. If you notice how I'm holding my head. And you can see on this side, my head is not straight exactly. That's because I was born with, in my left eye, my left eye can't go this way. It stays straight or it can move to the center. It's called Duane's retraction syndrome. So it's just something I've had to live with. There's really no cure for it. You can't go in and get an operation. Just is what it is. Also, I was a toe walker. Believe it or not, when I was a kid, my hamstrings were like piano strings. They were so tight, I could not put my heels down. I had to wear braces. And of course, as a 6-year-old, you're worried about kids making fun of you for wearing these fiberglass braces. I had scoliosis, so curvature of the spine. This is while growing up in New England. But every year we'd take a trip up to Boston. Dr. Goldberg would give me the X-ray, and he'd be like, "Yeah, you're getting close to center. You're getting close to center." And after a while, it corrected itself miraculously. I don't know how that happened, but just little things, I mean, everybody experiences that, and just hardships with dealing with stress and anxiety. But yeah, just stuff like that. But there's people that have experienced far worse than me. And so my heart goes out to all of them for soldiering on, like you and everyone else that you deal with, your guests and your audience. So it's just I'm
Now,
glad to be here.
growing up, I hated people from New England. I'm a Dolphins fan, and we always got our kicked by the Patriots. I'm a Lakers fan, and we always got our asses kicked by the Red
Hey,
Sox.
the Celtics, yeah.
But as I
Some great
grow up,
rivalries.
I realize what an amazing owner Mr. Kraft is, and I call him Mr. Kraft out of respect. And I honestly love the Boston Celtics coach. He is an amazing kind of dude. So, us both being from the East Coast, tell us a little bit about, where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And how did you get into the whole crazy world of getting into media?
Sure. So the first thing is that I didn't grow up, well, not all of my childhood was spent in New England. I was born in California in a place near Monterey, California, but I was actually born inside an Army fort, Fort Ord, O-R-D, which is now, I believe, a university. It's not even, through the Cold War, they changed it. They got rid of it. But my dad was in the Navy, but he was stationed at Monterey, and so that's where I was born, inside that Army fort. And then we bounced around the country. We spent like 6 months in California. Then we actually did go to Newport, Rhode Island, because he was going to school there. And then for a very brief time, another 6 months maybe. Then down to Charleston, South Carolina. Then Falls Church, Virginia. And then finally, when he retired from the Navy, we went in 1976. Then we went back to New England to stay. And my mother was a newspaper reporter, both in the Midwest and then in New England. And before her, my grandmother was a newspaper reporter in the Midwest. So you could kind of say it's in the blood, although my path was a little bit rocky because initially, and you could maybe chalk this up to watching Miami Vice as a kid, but I thought it would be glamorous to be a cop. Either law enforcement, city cop, or maybe a federal agent. So that's what I went to initially. I went to school for that. I got a 4-year degree, a BA in criminal justice, and then I started getting into the testing. I took a test for Providence, Rhode Island police. Unfortunately, because of my tight hamstrings, I was not able to do this, what they call the sit and reach. Yep. Which was where you sit on your butt with your legs stretched out in front of you. You got to push this wedge so many inches down this runner, and I failed it. And so so that was it. At least I didn't. So they did the physical before they did the written exam and then the psychological and all that. So at least I didn't waste any more of anybody's time. But I got further along in the Border Patrol. This is when they called it. Well, I guess it's changed a little bit now with ICE. I think they now refer to it as ICE, correct? But yep. But back then it was called Border Patrol. It's long before Homeland Security. I'm talking back in the early to mid '90s. Yep. And just to give some perspective, it was very difficult either to get on to a police force or to become a federal agent. As far as I understand it now, at least I don't know about federal so much, but with law enforcement, they are starving for people. They are really hurting. I would say primarily because of the defund the police movement, and we can get into that later if you want.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get into it.
Yeah. They're desperate for people to join. And but back in the 90s, you could, you'd be in a room with 200 people and you're vying for like 2 spots or something. It was crazy. Anyway, so I got a little further on in the Border Patrol. I got through the exam and got into passed the interview, which was you go before a board of 3. Got through that, and then it came time for the physical. The doctor checks you over head to toe, and I was going to have to get glasses because my eyesight in this eye is not 20/20, and they also said And I wasn't too interested in that at the time. And then they also said, well, geez, we're going to send you to the southern border. We can't tell you where we're going to send you. You could be living out in the middle of nowhere. You could be in a city like El Paso, or you could be living in a shack in the middle of the desert. And I'm like, that really doesn't sound so great, Uh, so I then started to rethink things. And also the other factor was, as a kid, really, at 22, 23 years old, I started to take stock and think like, well, emotionally, maybe I'm just not there yet to have that responsibility. And that's why I have such a deep respect for law enforcement, for first responders, for the military, for veterans, because it's a heavy responsibility to take on. And I wasn't sure, I wasn't 100% that I could. So I went back to school for journalism because I always loved writing, and saw how my mom and my grandmother made careers out of it. I always enjoyed writing, loved it, and but I thought about it. I'm like, well, you know what? I could be a writer and be a professor, but that would mean going back to school for like another 6 years or something. I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. And because I knew I didn't want to just teach high school or grade school, I wanted to teach college kids if I was going to teach anybody. But I said, I don't have the time to go back and get a PhD, which is mostly what the school, colleges and universities are looking for, is a PhD. So I said, let me try one course at journalism. So because I was working during the day as a security officer at a hospital in Providence, Rhode Island Hospital. And then I was going to school at night for journalism. And so I took the one course and got hooked, and I just went, as many courses as I could take. Probably was like 2 a semester. I was able to pull over my courses, a lot of the courses, my gen eds, from my first degree. I think they call that matriculation, some fancy dancy word. But yeah, I was able to bring a lot of those over. And so I went year round, through the summers for like 2.5 years and got a Bachelor of Arts in journalism. And then just started my job search. And I had a job in Rhode Island for about 5 months. It was full time. This was before I got my journalism degree. I took a leave of absence and I took this job for 5 months. It was at a daily newspaper, a startup paper, which is unusual that someone would start up a newspaper. But the owner hated his local hometown newspaper, and he wanted to put it out of business. So he started up his own newspaper. Well, it didn't go so well for a number of reasons. But 5 months later, I was out of a job. And so I just picked right back up with my education and finished my degree, and then started looking for jobs. Couldn't find anything in New England, but did find a job in Pennsylvania. And then, so I've been here ever since, and that was 1998.
All right, so let's talk about, because I want to go back to because I joined the military the day I turned 17. So I mean, I wasn't even 18; I was 17. Wow. And and I try not to curse on here, but it's my show, so I guess I can. It was a mind fuck when at the age of 17, I had to sign my will and testament. I had to sign my inheritance over to somebody. So, at 17 or 18 years old, you're still a young man, and you have to sign, your last will and testament to somebody because you're probably going to go somewhere. So, that's why I give a lot of respect to, veterans, first responders. My house, we bleed red, we bleed blue. A couple of years ago, my daughter was a police officer for Halloween. So for me, I love my first responders and I love my military. But it was smart of you, even at that young age, to think this might not be for me. This may not be cut out for me. So I think you were wise beyond your years to actually think about that, because most people don't think about it. They're like, you know what, just give me a gun. I'm gonna go shoot somebody.
No. Ooh. That's the wrong attitude to have for sure. Yeah.
So, talk to us because, you did 5 months at that local paper, but I'm sure you gleaned so much from that learning experience. So talk to us about the first article you ever had to write.
Well, I can tell you about the first breaking news story that I had to cover for that paper. It was a kind of a 2-vehicle crash, kind of your standard crash in this town. And I remember I went with a photographer. That's usually how it used to work, at least. Nowadays they don't send a reporter and a photographer. Just send the reporter. The reporter can get the shot with their cell phone. But back when everything was split up, like I was just a reporter, I didn't do anything else, and it changed later on. But so I respond to the scene, and there's a crowd around it, but it wasn't cordoned off with any yellow tape or anything. And so I walked right up to where they were using the jaws of life, or hydraulic equipment, as we refer to it now, to pull apart this vehicle to free the individual who was trapped inside. And so there was the firefighter standing there. I'm like, oh, hey, what are you doing? What are you guys up to here? And the guy just was like, get the hell out of here. So that was my introduction to it all, to learn to keep my distance. And since that time, I've always respected the yellow tape, where it's like police line, do not cross, or just emergency line, or whatever it might say, because reporters over the years or whatever have gotten in trouble for crossing over that yellow tape or ducking under it or whatever, and I always made sure to respect that and realize that there's other ways to get a story. You can't just bust in there and think that you have the run of the place, because you really don't. Because as a reporter, it doesn't give you any special designation or any immunity or anything like that at all. You are a citizen first, citizen number one, and then you're a reporter. That's something that I always tried to keep in mind. And sometimes I had to, extend a little helping hand to people at scenes. So I kind of took off the reporter hat and just put on the citizen hat.
Okay, so now you go into this new newspaper, trying to take on the old newspaper, and like for me, New York, it was always, the New York Post, against the other paper. So what was it like being there as the newbie? And I'm sure you had to. There's other people from the other newspaper hating on you a little bit.
Well, and actually, to tell you the truth, we didn't have a lot of contact with those folks. Where there were some, where we were at loggerheads or where there was some conflict was actually internal. I was a definite rookie. I was like rookie of the rookies because I had never worked at a paper before. Everybody else that got hired had some type of experience, whether it was at a weekly paper or, whether the paper was 2-3 times a week, something like that. Everybody had some kind of experience. I didn't have a journalism degree. I had a criminal justice degree. I had a couple of things that I had written that had never been even published. They were just stuff that I had written for classes. But the owner took a chance on me, because he said, "Oh, this guy knows law enforcement, so I'm going to make him my crime writer." And I mean, I was flattered and honored to be chosen for that role. But because I had the least amount of experience, I was the first one let go. When it came time, when hard times hit, and he said, "Hey, guess what? Everybody's going to have to take a pay cut." I was like, "Okay, I'll take a pay cut." But then when he called me into the office, he said, "I'm not giving you a pay cut. I'm giving you a pink slip, because you're not multifaceted yet." I was still raw as a reporter, and so that's why after that 5-month stint, I sought out an internship at a different paper, and the editor at that paper was like, "Why?" Because I needed experience in covering meetings, like town hall meetings, school board meetings, stuff like that. That's that bread and butter, or well, it used to be, because local news now is kind of a dinosaur. But at that time, it was vital as a reporter that you have that experience. So I needed it. And because the editor was like, "Wait, you already had 5 months full time. Why do you want to come back to us?" I said, "Just throw meetings at me." I said, "I will I will cover meetings for you like nobody's business. That's all I want." And he's like, "Okay." So that was over, that internship was over a summer. And then when that ended in the fall, that paper took me on as a part-time reporter, and I was making like $25 a story. I would go out, cover something, come back, drive back to my house where my computer was, and I had a modem that they had given me, and I would have to dial in and type up my story. It was crazy. This was like 1997.
It sounds like Spider-Man, where the guy goes in and has to hand the pictures in to try to get paid for a story.
Right. Yeah, I mean, everybody in journalism has had to work for free,
Yeah.
and then work for peanuts. Pretty much everybody, at least used to be. That's how you got your start. I mean, when I wanted something published when I was first starting out in journalism school, I wrote like letters to the editor, so that I could just say, "Well, look at me, I had something published," just to see my name in print.
Yeah.
And to make an argument that made sense enough to be printed.
So when did you get your first full-time job doing this?
So after that stint in Rhode Island, and then I got my degree. Then it was early 1998 in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Excuse me. Yeah, I couldn't get a job in New England, or my efforts were fruitless in New England. So I broadened my search. I had an offer for a newspaper in upstate New York, but it was going to be like a one-man kind of thing, a one-person bureau. They used to call them bureaus. So I was like, I don't know if that's for me. So I did some more searching, and then I got the offer in Chambersburg, which is a relatively small. They call in Pennsylvania, we call them boroughs. We have boroughs and townships. We don't have towns.
Yep.
Boroughs, townships, and cities, and counties, of course. So the borough of Chambersburg, which the population might be about 25,000, so it's very small. But then the county. So the paper covered the county of Franklin County. So that was my first full-time job. For some reason my camera went out.
That's all right. I can hear you.
Don't know why that is. Looks like so.
Yeah.
There we go.
So
Right.
now, okay, so you get on to Chambersburg. Were you doing just crime, or were you doing everything?
Well, crime and courts. So in Pennsylvania, I think it's well, I don't know. Pennsylvania is a commonwealth. It's not a state.
Yeah.
So it might do things a little differently than states do, but we have the magisterial level, which is the lowest level of courts, and then after that we have the county court. So I was covering both the magisterial level and the county level as a court reporter, and then also covering crime. So a bit of both there.
Okay, so like for me, and I'm a true crime buff. I specialize in serial killers. I think I've read almost every single book on serial killers and stuff like that, and true crime. it became a passion for me. I don't know why, but so when did it become a true passion for you? Because some people like, maybe I don't want to go to the the crime area, because sometimes mentally you can get pretty dark when you start covering a lot of different cases. And a lot of people might have said, you know what, I'm good with just covering firemen getting the cats out of the trees, and maybe I don't want to get into this whole get too deep into this crime area. So what made you change your mind?
Well, there was the occasional feel-good story, sure, but few and far between, really. I somehow, I don't know, I was able to to kind of turn that off, if you will. I think I felt I was somewhat removed from it, because by and large these weren't people that I knew personally, although I did emotionally feel for them. But there is also a part of you that you kind of have to protect, so that you don't, as you say, kind of go down a dark path. But I was able to, write about these things and still remain, somewhat removed from them, so that I could cover them. You have to put on your professional hat as a journalist, and we can get into that more later. But being objective and presenting all sides of a story, and it's a craft. Journalism is a craft. Reporting, I kind of use them interchangeably. Some people scoff at the word reporter, and they like to say, "Oh, I'm a journalist." Well, I'll call myself a reporter any day. Because that's what you're doing. You are reporting to your audience, to your readership, and you're letting them. And this is something that's been lost, and part of the reason why I wrote my book. But you present everything to your audience, your readership, and you let them use their critical thinking to take it from there. Make up their own mind. And I took that seriously, and as I know that. My colleagues did as well, but since that time, I've seen the teaching of journalism kind of take a turn, and they're not teaching objectivity anymore. They're teaching other things. Like I said, we can get into that if you want later on. But
first, I want to ask, for like me, I had a 23-year career in the military until I got hurt and lost my vision. But 9/11 is what affected me most and turned my whole life around. So out of your whole career, 25 years in media, what was the one story that you covered that impacted you the most?
Well, I'd say there are actually two. It's pretty much a tie. So I'll tell you about those. One was about a woman named Danielle Keener, and she was, I can say her name because she was very, I wrote the story about her. She approached me, or approached my paper, wanting for us to write a story about her because it was part of her healing. She was a rape survivor. She and at the age of 19, she and a boy that she was interested in, they weren't quite dating yet, but they were kind of in that period where you're talking to each other and stuff. They were kidnapped by an individual, and at gunpoint. They were driven along the Susquehanna River, which is the river that separates York County from nearby Lancaster County. A lot of people might recognize Lancaster County.
Yep.
He drove them along that river. He raped her. He shot them both and dumped them into the river, but through, a miracle, they survived. And then police, of course, got onto things and arrested the guy, and he was sent to prison for, I believe it's over 200 years. So he will never be getting out. But Danielle approached the paper, and because she and her counselor had decided that this would be part of her healing, to come forward and tell her story and as an inspiration to others. And she just, the only thing that she kind of asked, or the only request that she made was that her faith be included in the story. And I said, that's not a problem. It was part of your healing. So of course we can talk about that. So I wrote it as a narrative, starting from when Danielle and the guy she was interested in, whose name happened to be Daniel. So Danielle and Daniel, I just started from the beginning and went through it kind of blow by blow, and ending with the court case, and then Danielle achieving a certain amount of healing, and I'm sure she continued, because she would come back. She went to school, I think she was from the York area, York County, but she went to school, I think, in Philadelphia. But she would come back and participate in like victims marches and things like that. And she would give presentations, talks, and I believe, as far as I know, she became a counselor herself. So it's just amazing, her recovery, and got married, had children. So that was one story. The second story was, and that story was one narrative story. That it was a long story, but it was one story. The other one was a like a 5 or 6 part story, also a narrative, so told in a story format, and it had to do with a flood that occurred on Mother's Day a number of years ago here in the county. Terrible flood, and a mother and her daughter were in a vehicle and were swept away and died in that flood. So I interviewed the victims' family. I interviewed the first responders quite a bit, and kind of put it all together. So I would say those are the two most significant stories. Although there's others, like when I still, I'm here in York County after leaving the newspaper in 2021. So I still see things that remind me of some of the stories that I've covered, the places that I might drive past, and I'll remember things that happened that I covered at those places. So yeah, it stays with you. It certainly does.
So you left your job in 2021
Mm-hmm.
in the height of COVID-19. Some people would say, wait a minute, why would you leave your job when there's so many people suffering because of COVID-19 that can't go to work? So what was your thought process in leaving your job?
Well, I mean, there were a number of things that were going on in the industry and at my job in particular that really rubbed me the wrong way, and kind of really sent me a message that it was time for me to go. I mean, one thing is I knew that, well, either they were going to replace me with someone, or they were just going to take what I did and it would be absorbed into the other people that were there at the paper, which was a common thing that happened because the newspapers, my newspaper and others, were going down. So when somebody would leave, instead of filling that position, they would just split it up and say, okay, like, for example, the investigative reporter gets a job somewhere else. So they just make an announcement and they say, oh, well, guess what? Now everybody's got to do a little investigative stuff in addition to all the other stuff you're doing, because we're not going to hire anybody to fill that position. But no, I mean, it was we were all as a reporter, we were in our homes for a year. So we were working out of our homes. And see, the newsroom is is typically it's a place of high activity. There's a lot of ideas being thrown around, a lot of camaraderie. People are swearing, people are joking, telling stories, swapping ideas. Hey, how does this sound? How's that sound? Oh, I got to do this. Oh, can you believe this? All that kind of stuff. And so to go from that to just being sequestered in our homes, certainly better than not having a job. Absolutely, 100%. But excuse me, like I said, there were things that were going on at my job that I just it kind of just led me down the path of, you know what, Ted, you got to start looking for something else. So I'll give you one example. It was that it was told to me that I couldn't use mugshots anymore, so photos of suspects. And it was said that, well, this is a corporate thing, but we don't think it's fair to minorities. And I said, but everybody's getting arrested. Like if you look at the mugshots, there's all races, all ethnicities that are being represented. And when I look through the affidavits to see what I can cover, I'm not looking for color. I'm looking for whatever the charges are. Do they meet a certain threshold? I'm not going to go after anything petty. So do they meet a certain threshold that would warrant a story? So that kind of caused me to. I was taken aback by that, and then they also said, my editors also said, well, we don't want you to cover like the day in day out, like armed robberies and shootings and stuff like that. We want you to look at more of the issues. We want you to get into the neighborhoods and talk to the people and look at the issues. What's behind all this? So I was a bit mystified by that as well, because they said we want more of a balance, and it might sound a little egotistical, but I said, well, I am the balance. I said, if you look at me, and then you look at everybody else working for this paper, doing business stories, doing politics, education, whatever, I am the balance to all of that. I'm the stuff that's, it's the unvarnished, raw stuff that people, I mean, it had a very high audience. A lot of people liked reading it. I think because of, and this is probably a phrase you're very, very familiar with, situational awareness.
Yep.
People want to know what's going on in their neighborhoods. And there was a phrase that I kind of developed, that the people have a right to know, and reporters have a duty to report.
No, but do you think also, because 2021, I think, so many newspapers have gone out of business. I can't remember the last time I picked up a newspaper. And I think it's just, I get the free ones just for the coupon. I don't remember the last time I actually picked up a newspaper. And I know that the readership has gone mostly digital now.
Right.
So did you see that on the wall around that time?
Well, we were online for sure. We had a website, and they made it part of our responsibility to promote our stories as well. Like they would, the editors would promote on the newspaper Facebook, and in addition to the website, and newspaper Twitter. But then we all had to maintain our own accounts, Twitter, Facebook, etc., and promote our stories as well. So they see, that was at the point where they said, you're not a reporter anymore. You're a multi-platform journalist. They changed the job description. So you're a multi-platform journalist. You write, you take video, you take photos, you work social media. So you do all that. So things had really changed. And so the number of photographers that we were using started dropping because we were doing some of that work as well. But yeah, we had the website going and all that, but it seemed, I'm not an ad person, that's the other side of, you got the newsroom and you have a wall and then you have advertising, because you don't want to be tainted by what the advertising is doing. You don't want anybody from advertising coming over and saying, and not to say that they would, but we don't want to even create that appearance that somebody from advertising could come over and say, hey, I got this big client. Can you do a puff piece on them? We don't want any of that. We don't even want the appearance of impropriety. So anyway, that was advertising, and yeah, we were the newsroom. So two separate entities. But it seemed as though there was a difficulty in making the website work as far as monetarily. The ads that you had in the newspapers weren't able to translate to the ads that you had on the website. That's why I was saying, well, heck, you had all those galleries of the mugshots. Well, that was another thing. That we had galleries of mugshots, just mugshot after mugshot after mugshot, and they got a ton of views. So I was thinking, well, if you could monetize that, put ads on that, attach ads to that, that's where you're getting the most eyes. Yeah. But corporate did away with the mugshot galleries. In addition to just the mugshots for every person that I might have written about. So there seemed to be a challenge in monetizing the website and getting it to produce a lot of money. So they went from, that was, the ads were one thing. Then they said, oh, let's focus on subscriptions. Let's try to get subscriptions. That was a difficult task as well. Yeah. And just from the outside looking at it, they would make offers like, oh, get 6 months for $1. Well, how the heck are you going to make any money off that? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you want to give somebody a great deal to entice them, but geez, like, I don't know. I couldn't fathom it. I was bewildered as to how they were going to make a lot of money off that.
So take us to the day where you finally said, you know what? I'm sick and tired. I'm putting my resignation letter in. What was the final straw that broke your camel's back?
Well, I mean, it was those things that I talked about, and actually it was over a period of several years that I had been searching. So I had a couple of interviews in the realm of public relations. And that's kind of the other side of the communications coin. For those who don't know, like journalism, if you imagine, would be on one side, and then PR, public relations, would be on the other. And we as reporters, we'd look down our noses, we'd scoff at PR, because we'd say, oh, that's the dark side. Why? Because as reporters, as journalists, who do you owe your allegiance to? Well, to the truth and to your readers. But those hacks over in PR, well, they just owe their allegiance to whoever's paying them. They have to say that everything, that whatever company they're working for, they have to say that that's great, nothing negative. But I mean, as reporters, sometimes you depend on people in public relations to feed you information. So you see the dichotomy there, but also where they intersect. And so I was, like I said, for a period of a few years, I was on the hunt, and I had a couple of interviews, but never got a job offer. And then finally, this one particular job came along, and I'm like, man, I just had a feeling. And so I had one initial interview before, I think, like 3 people. And then they invited me back for a second interview, and I had a week to plan for it. And I planned every day of that week, working on various, they gave me a list that, like, we want you to bring this, we want you to construct a video, put together a video, all this thing. So I worked every day of that week I worked, and until I had the interview, I walked in there and there's 6 people in there. I'm like, all these people from me? Oh man. And I got the job. So I'm very, very thankful for that. And in my current job, I still deal with the media. I'm just on the other side of it. I now give them information. So I feel I'm in a good position to do that because I was a reporter at one time. So I know the plight of the reporter, and I'd like to think I do a fairly good job of helping them when I can.
All right, so now let's talk about your book, because
yeah, you mean this thing? You mean this thing right here?
Little thing right there. Yeah. I actually have 2 books. My second book just hit #1 on Amazon.
No way.
But
wow.
My first book was my life story, and it was very cathartic, but I learned a lot about myself writing a book, because everybody says, "Oh, just write a book," and you're like, "Yeah, that's not how it works," So talk to us about why the process you made in writing your book.
Yeah. So, I mean, being a writer for a long time, I've thought about writing a book for years. Even when I got out of my first college in 1992, I wrote probably 150 pages, just like you mentioned, a catharsis, 150 pages about my the 4 years that I spent at school, all the weird and funny and sad things that happened along the way, where you're in that bubble of, you're in that, if you've been to college, like you're in this kind of this bubble of security, kind of somewhat sealed off from the outside world to some degree. But anyway, so I wrote that, and that never became a book. I still have a copy of it. It's getting moldy, but because I wrote it back in 1992 and printed it out. But anyway, I always wanted to write a book, and I was kind of, do I write fiction? Do I write nonfiction? And then when I left journalism, I had my answer. I knew what I was going to write about. It was all of the things that where had we gone wrong? Where had the media gone wrong? The mainstream media, because the subtitle, the title of the book is "Saving the Beast," and I'll explain that in a second. But the subtitle is "A Recovering Reporter." That's me, a recovering reporter. It's almost like a sickness, or you're stricken with something. A recovering reporter reflects on America's broken media and how to fix it. So that's the full title of the book. So yeah, I wanted to look back and see where things had gone awry, because I knew that, I mean, at one point there was this great trust between, there was a great relationship by and large, between the media and the American public. And somehow it had gotten twisted and mutated and misguided, and now here we are, and there's frustration and there's downright hatred for the media. How did that all happen? What was that's the first section of the book. The second section of the book is what's the fallout from that? Because of that, what then happened? And then the third section is the how to fix it. So just drawing on my 25 years as a reporter, what would I do if I was in charge, or what would I say if the media bigwigs came to me and said, "We need help. What do you suggest?" If they really, really wanted to turn things around, what would they do? What are the steps that they could take to possibly remedy, repair, rehabilitate that situation?
Well, I told you before we even got on, I went on a news diet about 5 years ago. I don't watch the news unless it's a hurricane or something like that, because if I turn on CNN, and I'm not shitting on CNN or Fox News,
Sure.
because actually I think CNN makes the best documentaries. So I love watching all the documentaries on CNN. But if I turn on CNN right now, they're talking about Trump. If I put on Fox News right now, they're talking about Trump. If I put on MSNBC, they're talking about Trump. So
Trump is money.
So I don't even go on anymore because I realize, and I have a lot of friends that are, in the news and authors, and they always tell me, hey, if it bleeds, it leads. So we're not going to be showing anything positive on the news today. If you're looking for and puppy dogs, you're not going to find it on any of the channels, right?
Well, I mean, people love to see a train wreck. They can't turn away from it. I think part of that might be because it makes them feel better about themselves. Like, lucky that ain't me, But you kind of look at it from afar and be like, well, that's terrible, but at least it ain't me or anybody I know. So I think there's that, but there's that fascination with the macabre, if you will. But you talk about Trump. Trump is money. Trump is money. I've looked at polls and information about that. When he was president, the media companies were doing well. When he wasn't president, not so much. They cover Trump and the ratings go up. They make more money. So Trump is money. We have the election coming up very soon, and so things are heating up on both sides. It's just full speed ahead as far as the election. I for one can't wait for it to be over because then I won't be getting those texts anymore. It doesn't matter how many texts I delete and block, I'm going to be getting as many, if not more, the next day. So I'm ready for it to be over. But I think that kind of back to your question, I think we're now at the point where we're so split as a country down the middle. Everybody retreats to their own echo chambers. If you believe a certain way, you know where to go to get what you believe repeated back to you, so you feel better about yourself. And if you believe another way, then you go somewhere else. So we're all retreating to our own echo chambers because we're just so so partisan. And I hope there's I am, generally speaking, I'm a glasses half full kind of guy. So I hope there's a way to return to that. But if mainstream media is able to do that, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful. So I don't know if the media has hit rock bottom yet. Like any individual who's going through something or a drug addict or anything like that. Only the drug addict can really. You can have all the interventions you want, but the drug addict has to pull themselves out.
Yeah.
So for the media, the media has to realize, and I think the only way they're going to realize is with money. They have to lose enough money to kind of get hit over, to take a frying pan to the head and be like, you know what? We really have to change. People are really upset. And right now I think they're kind of coasting along because they're like, oh, we've got our base, so we're okay, we're good, Yeah, we might have to lay some people off, but whatevs. They're like that. But they haven't reached the point where they've lost enough money to come to that rock bottom point and to say, you know what, we need to make a monumental change. And I think so I talk about this in the book that either that's going to happen or we're just going to, or the paradigm shift is that the American public is going to take their time and their money and go elsewhere, which they have to a certain degree. They've gone to independent journalists. They've gone to citizen journalists. So that's going to continue. We're going to, look at Tucker Carlson. He gets fired from Fox, but then he's his own boss now. Yeah, he's got some type of contract with Twitter, but he set up his own network as well. And his interviews on Twitter are doing far better than any of the networks.
Look,
So,
even Joe Rogan in his
right.
podcast,
Yep.
millions of views.
Right.
But I think, in my
Yeah,
opinion,
podcasts are huge. Podcasts are huge.
I think that things started to change, and like I said, I'm just a reader. I'm a person. I'm addicted to knowledge, and I read everything I can. I think a lot of things started to change during the Clinton era, and then with the Princess Diana death. Then I think it became paparazzi and TMZ news, and now everything. A lot of times, if I want to go find out if something happened, I'll go to TMZ and find out if it really happened. I don't go to some of these big newspapers. I'm like, because I know that if TMZ says something, if something happens, they get it quick. The information is quick.
Right.
So,
I mean,
when did you start noticing the changes between old school journalism to what I call, social media journalism?
well, there's several levels to it. One is I trace back some of the transgressions committed by journalists, by reporters, that really had an impact, I think, cumulative effect on the public, developing a distrust, all the way back to a woman named Janet Cook, who wrote a story in the Washington Post, totally fabricated, about either an 8 or 9 year old boy who was a heroin addict. It was entirely concocted. She won the Pulitzer. It was later discovered that it was a fake, and so she had to give the Pulitzer back. But there were a number of others that followed her. So that is probably the lack of vetting of people when in the hiring process, but also mentoring, proper mentorship, but also, like you were saying, kind of the rise of sensationalism, the rise of the 24/7 news cycle. So there really isn't an end to the news cycle. You've just got this constant drip, drip, drip. So people are hungry for any little morsel that you give them. And I'll tell you a story. I remember the first time that whole concept, I realized that whole concept was, I was out the door. I was going to go to respond to a murder-suicide in the city of York, Pennsylvania. And somebody stopped me on my way out, a coworker of mine. She stopped me on the way out. She said, when you get there, give me a call. I said, why? She said, well, tell me what's going on. I said, I'm not going to know anything as soon as I get there. I have to interview people. She said, well, just whatever you see. I'm like, that is really weird. But that is, over time, how it happened. That was the start of it, at least my perception of this, just any little morsel. So I call into her and I say, I'm here. There's a car on the railroad tracks. They got it cordoned off with yellow tape. There's police, there's fire, there's EMS. I'm seeing if the coroner's here. There's a big crowd of people, and just that right there, that little piece right there, probably was what went online first for that, and then later on, I might interview somebody, a bystander or somebody, a first responder, and I think I might have called her back. But then the way that it kind of progressed from there was, we started getting on Twitter. So we just post stuff like that, constantly to Twitter. Or what thing that I started doing, and I'm sure I picked it up from somebody, I don't know where, was somebody suggested to me, I think, using Facebook Live. So I get to a scene, like say it's a fire. I get out of my car, and I'm parked, say several blocks away. Well, I start up Facebook Live, and I've got the camera facing out, but you can hear me. I'm narrating, and so I'm walking towards the fire, and it's like I'm taking people with me. You're right here with me. You're seeing what I'm seeing. I'm telling you whatever my perceptions or what I'm seeing that might help, but you're seeing essentially what I'm seeing. And, there's a burning house and the firefighters, getting the ladders or they're cutting holes in the roof or, all that kind of stuff. So those were, those seemed to work for us. Those were very successful. The Facebook Live things that I used to do for the newspaper.
So now, if we wanted to fix the media today, like, and even like if I go on Google and I search for something, I always have to go 5 or 10 lines down because to know that, okay, I'm not looking for the sponsored ad. I'm looking for the real juice. So, because we are in the social media world and I wanted to talk to you, that's why I wrote this down. I have a lot of friends. They're so worried because they are writers and copywriters. They're so afraid of AI taking over and taking their job.
That's another thing I go over in this book.
So let's talk about it because I use AI every day. I love it, but I use it as an assistant. I don't use it, as a crutch. So talk about what it's like now for copywriters and writers with every system right now having an AI generator.
Well, Richard, if you don't mind, I'd just like to go over one other thing because we were talking about the causes of this, and I wanted to talk just briefly about how journalism is being taught in schools now that differs from the way that I was taught. And that's I'll just go over it quickly. They are.
This is your house. This is your time. Okay. You're no rush.
So there is skewing objectivity. All right, and so because I have a phrase in the book. Objectivity is not a dirty word. That's a phrase I use in the book because that's the way that it's looked upon. It's been weaponized now. And also another phrase called both sidesism, which, you hear that and you're like, that's not a thing. That's not a word. But apparently it's being used as that's a bad thing. So presenting both sides, being objective, presenting both sides of a story or however many sides there are to a story. And as I think I said before, letting your audience, your readership, your viewership use their critical thinking to, use that as a jumping off point and maybe conducting their own investigation, their own research to find out a little bit more, or they make up their mind with what you give them. So you're laying it all out there for them. This is like everything that I know at this point in time, right? That is being cast aside for what they call, it goes by many names. It's either activism journalism or activist journalism, solidarity journalism. Oh, there goes the camera again. That is so weird.
It's okay. Just keep rolling.
There it is. Solidarity journalism is another word. Or advocacy journalism. So what it is essentially journalists are being given, it seems, the moral latitude to choose a side. For example, in the current conflict over in the Middle East between the Israelis and Palestine /Hamas /Hezbollah, etc. It, by and large, if you were to look at the media, the Israelis, despite being attacked on October 7th of last year, the Israelis are being painted as the villains, and the Palestinians, Hamas, Hezbollah, they are at least the victims, if not the good guys. Why is that? How did that occur? How is it that the media has chosen a side? Why is it that they looked before they leapt? They took the bait on there was one story, and I talk about it in the book, this came from a Palestinian source. Oh, the Israelis shot a missile and it blew up a hospital or whatever. I forget precisely what the building or parking lot or whatever. Oh, it killed all these people. Well, that was not true. It did not come from the Israelis, and it didn't have nearly the damage. the media had to really backpedal on that. They had to issue corrections on that because they didn't do their due diligence. They took one side, they took it quickly. There's another phrase that I uncork in the book: the thirst to be first sometimes means you're the worst. You know, you're taught that in journalism, that you want to be timely. You want to be, you're working on deadline. You want to be quick. You want to be first. You want to break stories. You want to have breaking news, but you also have to be accurate. And I think that has been lost also. But
don't you think, like, like if I turn on the news and I see breaking news, I've seen it so much. It's like, yeah, it's not really breaking news. It's, sometimes you see something so much, like on Fox News, it always says breaking news. And then they'll have something about something minute that it's not breaking news. So don't you think eventually people just stop paying attention to breaking news?
Oh, they get desensitized to it. Yeah, that could be the case, or they may be banking on that, and I'm sure they have research to reflect this or whatever, that that people are constantly tuning in, so it might be new to them. It might not be new to you if you've been watching for an hour straight, but it's new to the people that are just jumping on. That's that 24/7 news cycle that I spoke about, that was developed, I'd say generally with the start of CNN. That's when it all started.
So let's talk about, because I'm a Christian, I'm a man of faith. I believe in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But I know that anytime, whether it's Fox, CNN, NFL game, as soon as somebody mentions the name Jesus Christ, somehow the camera moves and they cut the interviews. And I think when you start seeing stuff like that, don't you think that's part of what you're talking about as far as censorship?
Some would look at it that way. Yeah, that is a debate that's been going on. Wow, because you look back to the founding of this country, and that our founding fathers had such a deep faith in God, and but then we have then later on we had the separation of church and state, so there is that conflict, and I think the media sometimes gets like, well, we don't want to offend anybody, we don't want to offend anyone at all, so yeah, we can't have that. But you heard me say earlier, when I was doing that story about Danielle Keener, and she said she was worried because I think she had that in mind, that we might not report about her belief in God or faith and her church. She wanted to make sure that I included that in the story, and I said it's part of your healing, so of course I'm going to include it, absolutely. And I didn't get any trouble. I didn't get any pushback from my editor on that, but I would have fought for it if he said, well, I don't think we should use this or whatever. I would have fought for that for sure.
So what are your thoughts on, because I have a hat that I wear usually when I'm out and when I'm doing something. It says pro God, pro guns, pro life. And because that's what I believe in. That's who I am.
Sure.
But I get people that look at me like I'm wearing devil horns or something. I'm like, that's just who I am. But
Right.
I believe that people like myself or on both sides. Like, I know if I wear a MAGA hat, people are gonna be up in arms. Or
Depends where you go.
Or if I'm a white guy wearing a Black Lives Matter hat,
Mm-hmm.
or if I'm a white guy wearing a White Lives Matter hat, I know that some shit's going to go down or something's going to be said, because I think we're so polarized in this country right now. So how do we get back to center?
Well, I can tell you from the media. I don't know about socially. but I can tell you from the media point of view. The first thing I say in the book, whoop, that's the back. The first thing I say in the book is, and it might, as I say, it might sound drastic or ridiculous, but the media has to apologize. They have to say they're sorry, and they have to mean it. So you talk the talk, and then you got to walk the walk. So when you say, you know what, we're sorry for over the decades we as a news outlet let you, our readers or viewers, down. We succumbed to outside pressure. We accepted gifts, money or otherwise, from groups and organizations that maybe they requested that we quash a story. We planned to publish or concoct a story that contained untruths. We at times allowed agencies or individuals within the government to influence the direction we took on stories. And the apology goes on for a little bit. But so you say that. We solemnly swear to wholeheartedly improve our journalistic processes and to return to journalism as it was meant to be, without political bias, without smear, without untruths. From this day forward, we will report stories with fairness and objectivity and let you, the reader or viewer, construct your own opinion rather than telling you what to think. So I kind of truncated it a little bit, but that's kind of the apology. So that's the first part of that.
So on the scale of 1 to 10, what do you think the possibility of that coming out?
Oh, no. But I mean, it's a wing and a prayer. But I'm saying, and you need to splash that across the front page, not hide it, deep inside the newspaper in a corner. But this is just, if I was given the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, if somebody came to me, the mainstream media collectively came to me and said, Ted, what can we do? I'd say start with this. And yeah, it's going to suck, and not everyone is going to believe you. So then you have to, you have to do the work, which is the next chapter, to let the public think for itself, to write stories straight, just write it straight. Don't be a sucker is another subheading. So don't fall for everything that you're told. Like I was talking about with the one thing over there in Israel and Gaza. Do your due diligence. Do the work, and don't just take information as it's given to you. So I like this whole section is we need more whistleblowers. There was a guy that came forward. You might remember earlier this year. His name is Yuri Berliner. Yeah. He worked for NPR for 25 years. And he wrote a story, not on NPR. He wrote an essay in it on another platform saying, here's how we lost America's trust. Because he said, NPR, we're always kind of left-leaning. But then we went we went off the deep end. And his, the top people over there at NPR didn't particularly care for that. And I think he had to have known, I haven't spoken with him, but he had to have known that this was career suicide, at least for his career at NPR. I believe he's actually writing, or he's working for the website that he published this story on. So he bounced back. But he had to know, hey, 25 years in, okay, I've got a certain amount of retirement or whatever. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to put this out there. And what they did was they said to him, geez, well, you published that somewhere else. You didn't clear it with us first, so you're suspended for a week. And he said, I think, well, his response at that point was to resign. Because, and I'm just speculating here, but he probably saw the writing on the wall and said, they're just going to they're going to continue to hound me, so I'm out of here. I knew this was going to happen, so I'm gone.
Right, so
I'm saying we need more people like him.
Well, let's look at it from the readers and the watchers' perspective. Like for me, if somebody asked me, and I coach high-level clients, and they're asking me, well, how can I change my life quickly? And I told them, I said, I could change your life in 90 days, guaranteed. And they're like, well, how can you do that? I'm like, first thing is stop watching the news. Because if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is put on the news and you hear negativity, and before you go to bed, you put on the news and you hear negativity, your whole day is going to have negative thoughts. So I tell everybody, don't pick up your phone for the first hour or 2 hours of your day, because
that's good.
You know, your reticulator activating system in your mind, you know, it's going to look for whatever you're searching for. So if you wake up and you're watching news and reading about death, and you're reading about the recession and the presidency, you're starting your day off hard, and you're going to be looking for the rest of your day. You're going to be looking for all this other negative stuff in all the rest of your life. So
I would agree.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, I would totally agree with you. I mean, news. Well, I'll say this: I was not a news junkie, so to speak. Like there are people involved in news, in the media business, that would consider themselves news junkies. So they outside of work hours, they're constantly looking at the news. Yeah. That was not me. When I left, I closed that door, and I don't mean when I left the newspaper in 2021. I mean every day. When I would leave, that would be it. I'm not going to take my work home with me. You know that phrase. Don't take your work home with you. I didn't even really need to look at flip on cable news when I got home or late at night or whatever. No, I didn't want to do that. So I think I must have seen the value in that separation. And I think
there are certain people in my own family that I know as soon as they get off work, or I have one family member that's retired, and all they do is watch news all day, and they're angry, they're pissed off because all they're watching, and it's one from each side, so they're all pissed off, and I'm like, just stop watching it. What's the problem?
I think that's great advice that you give your clients and your family members, although it doesn't sound like they've taken your advice.
They don't listen.
Yeah. I mean, maybe in some way they've found a way, or they feel they need it. It could be some, I don't know, an addiction. I mean, anything can be an addiction. I think that you have sound advice for your clients there. That's a good place to start. I've even caught myself, kind of nowadays, kind of falling down that rabbit hole and having to step back a bit and say, let's dial this back and not be so heavy into it.
And even like when I'm driving, either I'm taking courses on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. That's where I get most of my news from, is from LinkedIn.
Okay.
Or I'm listening to podcasts, or I'm listening to audiobooks. I mean, I turned on the news for like 3 minutes yesterday, and I'm like, all right, I'm done. So where do you see the future of, because like you said, newspapers are pretty much going the way of the dodo bird. Podcasts have become the new radio. So where do you see the future of media and newspapers and podcasts like that, stuff like that?
I mean, I see it like I was saying before, like either the mainstream media is going to continue to hemorrhage viewers and readers, and it kind of goes around in a circle. They lose readers and viewers, so then they have to lay people off. And when they do that, the product suffers. And when the product suffers, they lose more readers and viewers, and it just keeps going around and around and around like that. Either they're going to continue down that path, or they're going to somehow correct. Or the other shift is more people, like I said, are going to take their time and their money and go elsewhere to independent news sources, podcasts, and citizen journalists. That is that's, but I would also like to see, and I have been reading about some of this happening, a return to local news, because that was another thing that happened was local news was thrown out the window. And I saw it personally, where we would, when I started 20 plus years ago, we had a cadre of people. We call them freelancers, or the industry term is stringers. So they were doing what I was doing in Rhode Island, making $25 a story. I think they were making more, but where you get paid by the story. So we had people who get paid by the story who would cover a lot of the bread and butter, the town halls and the education board meetings and things, school board meetings and stuff like that. They would go out into the various boroughs and townships and cover those for us, and newspaper would pay them. I saw that start to dwindle until we only had a couple, and then it was totally done away with. So because I believe, my belief is because that the newspaper didn't think that it was making them enough money. They weren't getting enough eyes on those stories. But that is what people are interested in. People want to know what's going on in their backyard. So I've seen success with that. There's another county here. It's kind of like 2 counties over. Lebanon, not Lebanon, but Lebanon, spelled the same way. Lebanon County. There's a website that has risen up and is doing very well, covering the county. So it's a local source, locally owned. That's what I feel needs to happen. And I've heard that Gannett, which is a big chain, has begun to sell off some of their smaller local newspapers. So hopefully those local newspapers will then be bought by. It needs to be the proper candidate should be somebody who lives locally but has the money to the resources to buy such a product, probably at a reduced rate. But so that local news can thrive, and then you have to embed yourself into the community. You have to become part of the community, so that people have a stake in it, and they want to be part of it. There was another newspaper that I found. I think it's somewhere down south. The owner, female owner, she put up I don't want to say jacked up, but she increased her prices quite a bit, and folks were willing to pay it because they found such value in it. So I think hopefully that happens more. Hopefully we see more local ownership of local newspapers. We need to return to that. But also, like you were saying, people love their podcasts, and it's I recognize that. It's a huge medium. Just look at the views. Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and Sean Ryan. It's kind of interesting. Sean Ryan jumped onto Joe Rogan's podcast, and then Sean Ryan became the #1 podcast. I don't know if he still is, but he was. He may have just. It may have been fleeting. I don't know, but just interesting the power of the podcast.
All right, so let me ask you a question, because and this will be like one of the final questions is, I have a lot of friends. They're business owners, and I always hear, I always have a lot of people ask me, well, how do I pitch to get into the news? And since I have you on, you're an expert, what kind of pitches actually go through, and what kind of pitches you're like, I'm good, because I'm sure reporters and editors get thousands of pitches a day. So what are the ones that actually get through?
Well, I mean, I dealt a lot with crime. So I'd have people calling me saying, oh, this terrible thing is going on. Well, that terrible thing's going on. This person did me wrong or whatever. And what I needed in those cases was something, basically, essentially a piece of paper. I needed, did you file a lawsuit against somebody? Because I need that proof in your filing. Or was the individual arrested? And then I can go to the district justice's office and get the affidavit of probable cause. So I needed that. So that's just in the, but I don't think that's what you're talking about here. So I would say in general, the pitch should be short, to the point, should be either timely, as it might relate to something else that's going on nationally. If you have a national story, but you can relate it to something local, that is a lot of what newspaper reporters are looking for. We call it localizing. We want to localize the story. And if you can lay that, if it's a legitimate story, if it has legs, if you can lay that at a reporter's feet, well, then you've done a good amount of their job for them, because otherwise they're going to have to be hunting for, oh, how do I localize? How do I localize? Do I just go walking down the street and ask people their opinion on this major issue? Or so, yeah, localizing something, or if something, an idea that is either connected with the history of an area, like a deep history, or like any type of a first for the area. You know, hey, this has never happened before in this area, but it's happening now. Or even the feel good stories. Reporters do look for those. So something that is emotional, that has that emotional quotient to it, that's really going to, use the cliche, tug on the heartstrings, so to speak. They're looking for that as well. So I hope that gives them, your folks, a little bit of an idea there.
So Ted, how do we get in touch with you? How do we get into your ecosystem, and how do we purchase your book? Where do we find it?
Yeah. So you might know from publishing as well. There's kind of two avenues when you're self-publishing, which I did. You go through Amazon or Kindle Direct Publishing. That's one way. It's Amazon essentially, and then you go through another company called Ingram Spark, which handles all of the other. Yeah, handles all the other booksellers like Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, et cetera, everybody else. So we did both. I had a great editor who was just, like a publishing guru, who walked me through Amazon and all that stuff, and Ingram Spark. So we did both. But yeah, Amazon. And if you don't, for whatever reason, I did meet somebody that was like, well, I don't deal with Amazon. Okay, fine. Go to Books A Million, go to Barnes and Noble online. It's there as well. So yeah, I pretty much anywhere where you can find books, you can find this.
I love it.
If I could, Richard, explain a little bit about the title, Saving the Beast. So feeding the beast, feed the beast. That was a term that we used in journalism, and it was kind of a nebulous term because I don't know. I wasn't always sure who the beast was. Are we talking about our editors? Because they're begging for stories. Are we talking about our readership? Are we talking about just journalism in general? So that's kind of the way I looked at it. It's the craft. I saw the beast for the purposes of this book. I saw the beast as symbolic of the craft and the industry of journalism. And so, hence, we need to save the beast, because the beast is eating itself from within by all of these things that it's done to severely damage its relationship between itself and the American public. So that's how I got the title of Saving the Beast.
And I love it. And like I said, I can't wait to get my autographed copy, because I want one, and I love to read stuff like that. And by the way, thank you for picking up my book. Thank you for getting us to #1. We appreciate you.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
but
it's a God thing. I'm just trying to provide value. And hopefully, me and you can build a generational relationship from this point on. I'm all about relationships. I'm not transactional. I'm all about relationships. So I just want to say thank you, brother. I'm so glad that you hopped on today.
Richard, I'm so happy that I found you. I found you on LinkedIn. It's just fortuitous, and just by chance, or maybe not, maybe there was some type of divine intervention, but I just happened to stumble upon you on LinkedIn, and I'm so happy I did. Saw the work that you were doing, and I'm like, oh, I got to get in touch with this guy. I really like to get the word out there about my book, and it seems like we might be able to get something going. And so thank you very much.
I love you, brother. And I also want to thank Gorilla Mind Energy Drink. If you want energy, if you want focus, check out Gorilla Mind. And also the swag, new T-shirts just came out, hoodies, hats. And if you buy anything, 100% of the profits go to help end veteran suicide and homelessness. So nice. if you're proud to be a winner, make sure you wear what the winners wear. Brother, I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you, and hopefully we can collaborate and get together and do some things together.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Thank you, Richard.
I love it. Have a great weekend, guys. Remember, as I always say, the reason why I have this shirt that says I win, because I believe that every day when I wake up, I have a choice to be a victim of my past or a victor of my present and my future. And if you guys watch this show, you guys are no longer victims of your past, but victors of your present. And you guys are winners.
I like that.
Guys. And guys, remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is. Ted, my brother, have an awesome week, brother. Keep kicking ass and taking names.